Hello and welcome to CIO News. I am Khushbu Soni. I'm the founder and chief editor at CIO News. This is our exclusive interview tech talk series with Mr. Chandra Rao, the Vice President Enterprise Digital Services for Cloud Apps and Data at Techwave. We're going to be talking about, a very, very important topic, which is, of course, very trending today. And for that, I would want to welcome Chandra by giving a small introduction about him. Chandra Rao is a leading digital transformation specialist, and he has extensive multitasking domain experience in IT solutions, system integration, and distributed platforms. Chandra is an expert in deep tech-based enterprise solutions. He has built and mentored high-growth teams to effectively deploy end-to-end strategic planning, global delivery, post-delivery support, and maintenance services for core solutions. Chandra has also investigated and successfully resolved highly complex business challenges by leveraging digital agile solutions to ensure internal and external regulatory compliance for organizations worldwide. Chandra, it is an absolute pleasure to have you today, and I'm really looking forward to having this discussion with you.
Likewise, Khushbu, thank you so much for having me, and especially with you and the discussion, and on very hot topic. And in fact, it is making lots of transformation in the business, enterprise arena.
Right, absolutely. As Chandra mentioned, we're talking a very important topic, which is managing hyperscalers in cloud migration. So let's understand from you, Chandra. What are the typical ways to cultivate ongoing improvement and flexibility in the strategy for managing these hyperscale cloud providers throughout the cloud migration process. If we can begin our discussion with that, it would be excellent.
Absolutely, Khushbu. So typically, I mean, when the KPIs are aligned for any enterprise, and once you are, definitely onto the cloud, picking up any of the cloud service provider, otherwise called as hyperscalers. So I would recommend, with the experience that I see this as a third generation of cloud so far. And with that maturity that is coming in the enterprises, that they have already adapted to the cloud. So I would recommend they should, have a center of excellence, especially to have cloud center of excellence for every layer, right? So it's not, people should not perceive it as an infrastructure. They should take it as a digital platform, right? And the objectives that they have defined to get onto the cloud, right, to achieve some of the KPIs. It could be flexibility, or it could be availability, or it could be the robustness, or it could be the cost optimization, right? Or any other factors that will definitely benefit their own business line, right? So I think definitely they should start with a cloud center of excellence and understand how they are matching, or how they are measuring it to their objectives that they have defined. Have continuous learning of what is happening with the cloud, because as I was saying, being in the third generation of cloud, every service, I think today every cloud service provider or hyperscaler is having a minimum of 160 plus services each, right? And we should be monitoring it, probably getting adapted or upgraded to it, right? So that should be properly reviewed and continuously learned, experimented, of course, and have a good partnership with the cloud service provider. Or if you have a vendor, I think having a good relationship with the vendor and continue the skill development. At the same time, ensure, the larger KPIs, which we have been discussing about, also bring up the efficiency factors, continuously monitoring and bringing the efficiency factors, aligning to the KPIs with very pointed center of excellence is what I would recommend, Khushbu.
Sure, sure. And Chandra, so how does your team kind of ensure a seamless transition of existing workloads and applications into hyperscale environments while avoiding the disruptions to business operations?
That's a real good question. In fact, the maturity that we have achieved in terms of having proper assessment, right? Assessment and due diligence is the paramount for us. In fact, whenever there is a workload that is coming to us or an inventory that is being allocated to us, we'll ensure there is lots of assessment that goes in. And this assessment will typically getting into the impact analysis. Like not every workload is same, and not every workload will behave as planned once it is moved or migrated, right? So we have to have proper assessment criteria. At the same time, ensure there is a business impact analysis that is tied up into every inventory or category that has been definitely done for it, and thereafter come up with a proper strategy, right? Every enterprise have different objectives.
Yeah.
Some of them could be same, but the top 5 would be different from the later, right? So sometimes the enterprise would be doing this cloud migration to consolidate the workloads. And some of the enterprises might be doing because of the expansion or scalability of their business or growth of their business. And a majority of the enterprises could be doing this for security and compliance, right? And all of them could be doing for cost optimizations exercises as well, right? The completely the model of cost completely changes from capex to opex, and moving it from a workload based to a service based billing, that sense or that culture will be inculcated. So what we do is we get onto the right cloud strategy only after a proper assessment and due diligence and impact analysis,
Right.
in alignment to the greater objectives of these enterprises. So it'll be more of a discussion that starts with saying that, why are you doing this? Are you doing for the sake of, whether since your competitors are doing, or whether you need to catch up with somebody? So apart from this, probably there are much larger goals as only then we'll define whether it is we need to move them like lift and shift or replatforming or modernizing it or modernize and migrate or fine tune the guardrails, right? So that once you move on to the cloud or whichever is the target cloud or hyperscaler, so you have to ensure that all the typical metrics that are properly defined, designed, and implemented.
Right.
So we'll be going after strategy, we'll be going with the design and architecture, then we'll slowly get onto the data migration by doing proper impact analysis, then we validate it, right? And of course, after moving on things, we'll closely observe, monitor, and ensure the cultural aspects from a change management point of it is defined and also document it properly so that the knowledge transfer or transition can happen to our clients, Khushbu.
Sure. And what are the significant challenges have you encountered, or do you anticipate in your migration to hyperscale cloud? And how does your approach kind of address these obstacles, if there are any?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's not a cakewalk. It's not at all a cakewalk, and not one size fits for all.
Yeah.
And not every workload is same, and not every hyperscaler behaves the same way or anticipated way, I should say, right?
Right.
So while during the due diligence itself, we'll try to create a template for ourselves. So far, I mean, with the third generation, as I've been reiterating, we'll ensure there is a template for very normal workloads. When I say very normal workloads, We categorize after due diligence. During the categorization, the critical workloads are, validated in such a way that application compatibility, right? Because everything changes. Typically, the digital platform, what we have been talking about, once you get onto it, the way you deal, the way you monitor it, the way they respond to you from a performance and latency point of it, everything changes.
Right.
Now it all depends upon us how we fine tune things,
Right.
how we collect the metrics by continuous monitoring. Right. So if you take a very legacy application and if you take a contemporary application and if you take a workload that is, SQL based and a workload is non-SQL based, and you have backups or you have, storage that is coming from so many years or so many generations, all this is properly managed in such a way that what comes first, what comes next. So what is the sequence of it? While doing all this, we should be sensitive of the security and compliance matters, because you are making multiple copies of the data. You have to ensure that. At the same time, the major concern or challenge that comes in from the customers is, hey, look, while you are doing so, our costs have grown up by double, right? Because I'm doing the transition. So you get an OPEX bill and you have an CAPEX bill already, right? And while doing so, you need to jazz up your bandwidth a bit because you are migrating workloads. And sometimes till the cutoff date, you have two things running in parallel, right? The developers, the business users, they'll be trying on different machines, let's say test and quality on the production workloads. So all this is, we take it as a challenge. At the same time, we'll ensure that these are well addressed, right? And ensure there is a proper redundancy that is planned, and educate and create awareness to the customers, saying that, look, these are the typical headwinds that will come across once you move on, right? Don't be worried much about it, because we have a solution for everything that comes in, the known ones, right? Especially, right? And some of the legacy applications, sometimes we may have to rely on third party vendors, because if you bring a mainframe, right, and the workload of mainframe is completely different from the distributed system. At the same time, typical .NET application or an open source application and other tech stack plays a major role, Khushbu, if you say. We'll ensure all this by doing lots of due diligence, at the same time having the lessons learned addressed already, bring in a template so that we target on them.
Got it. Got it. And Chandra, what are the primary factors influenced your organization's decision to migrate to a hyperscale cloud provider?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the selection, right? Because there are so many options nowadays in compared to the previous years or decades. Now it becomes very tough to choose what is good and what is apt, what works better, what fits into our bill or template, or the strategy that I was talking about. So we make a checklist, and through that checklist, we do a kind of comparison, what fits well for certain applications, what's not, and how to counter that. For example, we start working on the categories of, like I was saying, 160 services, right? It could be more, all right? For example, one of the hyperscalers starts with only PaaS services. You'll not have any visibility of IaaS layer. That's good for data workloads, but it may not be for, IaaS layer or DevOps layer sometimes. Right. In certain categories, we look for what is the overall service offering by that hyperscaler. What kind of availability or footprint they have. because some of the hyperscalers up until recently, they have only 4 zones or 2 zones like that. But now I think most of them are coming up with very good footprint, which reduces the stress on the bandwidth from the compliance factors. Some of the enterprises or businesses cannot go beyond their law of land, so they have to ensure certain compliances, regulations. So we have to see whether the pods or point of presence pops, they call it as, all these are available and that fits into our business.
Okay.
A global company or global enterprise having footprint across the world and picking up a hyperscaler which has much good vicinity to their branches or offices or manufacturing units, they are there, and it lives up to the ecosystem and the tools that they provide, the cost and pricing models, and of course the scalability factors, one pod to another pod, free migrations or data transfers. So all these are properly checked right before getting into picking up any hyperscaler. At the same time, what is the contractual legal service agreements that we need to get in? Is there any vendor lock-in that sometimes resists our kind of change or flexibility factors, and documentation, etc., etc. But on a whole, I think we should go and do a kind of comparison checklist, etc. So that's how we do, Khushbu.
Awesome, awesome. And maybe if you can share a summary, of the present status of your cloud migration initiative and the range of its objectives.
Absolutely. As I said, objectives are aligning with the business goals.
Yeah.
And measuring them, continuously measuring them, right? That makes a larger difference.
Yeah.
Right? There shouldn't be a rush. At the same time, you should not be trailing, right? For example, before COVID and post COVID, there is a huge change, right? The speed at which we had to go for the cloud migrations is, I think, 2x speed, I should say.
Yeah.
Right. So that the availability of applications, both upstream, downstream, and the core applications, the data that is required, or the perimeter applications, all these things. I think most of it are coming as SaaS nowadays. But the workloads of an enterprise or our enterprise, in that matter, we are going as per the KPIs that we have defined or objectives that we have defined. And as I said earlier, we have built a very strong, center of excellence, which would take care of continuous monitoring, due diligence, assessments, performances, right? How they are behaving, because, not just defining the goals or not just defining the objectives, you have to measure them, right? So that when you measure, then you'll know like whether you have taken up a right strategy for X amount of applications, so that if that clicks, we can go to the second phase of it. So to answer your question, Khushbu, we have taken a phased approach. First phase was slow, but it was steady. But second phase was much faster than phase one. However, we tried bringing in very much lots of efficiency factors, built Kubernetes-based platforms, so that there is no much of issues in terms of availability and flexibility aspects and scalability aspects of that. Good control over it. At the same time, IaaS layer is completely automated using various other tools nowadays available, and every application is being thoroughly monitored from a performance point of it. But net, the tracking, the stability, the cost, because if you don't get onto continuous monitoring of your cloud workloads, I think your cost will be completely derailed. Consumption workloads vis-a-vis fixed cost workloads, getting into reserved instances, having a long-term contracts for at least certain applications and data objectives. I think all these are definitely helping. I should say we are well matured and well kind of going very steady, I should say.
Got it. Got it. Excellent. I think very important point is like I mentioned, because with the way organizations are looking at cloud migrations, evaluating hyperscaler providers, I think these are some of the pointers which are very, very important to note. And good that you've shared it with us. I have one last question, which I'm sure a lot of technology leaders would be keen to know. How does your organization define a successful cloud migration, especially within the context of hyperscale providers?
That's a great question, in fact, which is so typically all this, this episode of cloud migration,
Yeah.
digital transformation, or any modernization initiative is always seen as a technical initiative. But the question which you asked is targets the organizational goals or the business goals that come in. So
Right.
to define that as a successful initiative altogether, as I said, when we started, or the initiative that has been brought up onto the board and where we have discussed, so is it in line to that, right? So sometimes we may have migrated everything, the applications are going fine, but the cost is 2x.
Yeah.
Right? So that is not appreciated at all, right? So
Right.
that is one of the key success factors, right? Cost. Second,
Right.
let's say we have been running with 4 data centers prior to moving to a hyperscaler, and the availability or uptime of that time is 98%. And let's say after moving on to the cloud and the business is getting only 96% of uptime for XYZ reasons, then I think it's not a right success criteria.
Yeah.
Right? So there should be a 99.9x kind of availability that should be maintained. So to show to the CFO or CXOs where we have convinced to get the budgets to migrate, right? So first 2 factors. Third factor comes in how much of agility and customer experience that our end users, business users, and developer community and other stakeholders who are really experiencing it, right? From a connectivity, flexibility of connecting from anywhere, getting the bandwidth right, and getting all the services that could be that is required on the cloud, and also using various frameworks and tools, etc., that helps in managing every layer properly. Right. So if you ask me, the key success factors for every line item, and that aligning with the business goals or KPIs that we have defined, right? Yeah. So I think from my view or our view is, if these two are coming together and most of it has been achieved, only then the transformation or migrating to hyperscaler would be graded as a successful initiative, Khushbu.
Got it. Got it. Fantastic. I had a great conversation, like I said, Chandra. So thank you once again for taking out time, joining on our CIO News platform, sharing your transformation journey, your expertise for our viewers. I'm sure it will really help. And I'm looking forward to having many more conversations with you in the future.
Thank you so much, Khushbu. It was really great. And you have brought up very essential questions that the entire industry is looking forward. And I think these conversations should happen and help the entire industry. Thank you so much, Khushbu.
Means a lot. Thank you so much.